leading our program tonight.
Okay. Thank you all for coming out. I think this is the biggest group I've ever taught, so you make me very nervous. I am a registered dietitian. My background is that I've been a clinical dietitian for about 25 years. Most of my experience is actually with men. I worked at the VA Medical Center for several years in the surgical ICU and the medical ICU, as well as the oncology floor, the cardiology floor, the psych floor, substance abuse floor. I pretty much covered all of it in 25 years. And now what I do is I have my own practice called Soundbites Nutrition. I got a little tired of illness, not that I shy away from illness, but I really wanted to get on the other side and keep people healthy so that I didn't have to see them in the hospital. So what I'm going to make tonight is a couple different dishes. So the first thing we're going to start with is actually dessert, not that you're going to eat it, but I want to make sure that, oh, you're going to eat it. You're just not going to eat it first. So I'm going to start with the dessert so that it can cool and it can be baking while we're making a farro salad and then also a spinach strawberry salad. So now the weird thing about this recipe, and I will tell you this is not my recipe, this was, I do demos for a couple different companies that are on the East Coast that hire me here, and then I go out to different companies and do demos for them. And I'm not a trained chef, so please don't look at my knife skills. It's frightening. That's why I have Ginny cutting everything for me. So, but she's very experienced, yes, I love when she's here. So this dish, or this cake, is actually made with garbanzo beans, which is really weird, maybe. But it's a great substitute for people that are on a gluten-free diet. It also adds a significant amount of soluble fiber and protein to the cake, and you won't know that it's beans unless I told you. So the other ingredient, it's actually very simple. This is the second ingredient, or the second recipe rather, on your little handout here. So the other ingredients, there are 4 eggs, a bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips, a half a cup of sugar, and a teaspoon of baking powder. So it's a really, really simple recipe. One trick that you can do for people, and it doesn't have to be for people that are gluten-free, but if you're making a chocolate cake or brownies or something like that, instead of dusting your pan with flour, you can dust it with cocoa. And that way it keeps the cake completely gluten-free, and it also enhances the flavor of the cake because it's chocolate. There's also some health benefits to cocoa. It's actually a great source of antioxidants. So it actually has a little bit of nutritional properties to it. So without further ado, I'm going to do 1 cake at a time. I'm actually going to make 2 cakes, and hopefully everybody will at least get to taste it. I wasn't sure how many people were coming, so I usually double or triple the recipes. So I'm going to make the first one first. And what I've done is just rinse the garbanzo beans. And if you use canned beans, if you rinse them, it reduces the sodium content by about 30%. So why do I care about sodium? Why should we not have tons of sodium in our diets? Give me something specific about your heart. Blood pressure. Right. Too much sodium can raise your blood pressure. Scientists suggest less than about 2,000 milligrams per day, and that's about what's in a teaspoon of salt. So if you eat a can of Campbell's soup, you're getting about 2,000 milligrams in that can. Probably in, at least 1.5 servings. It's quite a bit of sodium. So most of your processed foods contain a lot of salt. The other thing with too much sodium is that it can increase bone loss. So, as you get older, you want to take care of your bones, because if you fall and you break a hip and you go in the hospital, you might not die of the broken hip, but you might die of pneumonia. I've seen it. That's probably one of the biggest reasons people pass away from a broken hip is not because of their hip, it's because they end up in the hospital and then they catch something awful. So you want to keep your bones really healthy. So I've got 4 eggs. I'm throw in here. Do I need to worry about the cholesterol in the eggs, yes or no?
No.
You guys are awesome. You don't have to. So after years and years of science and lots of good research, they found that really the cholesterol in the egg yolk and in other foods does not affect your blood cholesterol. So go ahead and eat the yolk. What I find fascinating is, people will eat egg whites and then they'll have bacon on the side. Don't do that. That's not helping. So the issue with that is that the saturated fat in your diet is much more likely to raise your blood cholesterol. Cholesterol is made in your liver. So when you eat high-fat foods, your body secretes something called bile to digest the fat, and then all those little extra bile fragments get transferred back to the liver, and the liver says, ooh, bile, let's make it into cholesterol. So you store bile in your gallbladder, but you make it in your liver. So you don't need your gallbladder necessarily, because your liver is going to continue to make bile when you need to digest fat. But when you eat all that extra fat, all that bile becomes cholesterol. The other thing that raises cholesterol, unfortunately, while I'm making a cake is sugar. So, and sugar, as you've probably heard before, can also potentially feed cancer cells. So we don't want to have a whole lot of added sugar in our diets. A little bit is okay. Moderation is fine. You don't want to be eating donuts every day. So, unless you're 90, then I don't care what you eat. Really, 80, 70, 80, I draw the line. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed. And everybody can hear me okay, right?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for not using the really fancy, expensive microphone. I know. Tell me you're not going to use this. No, I'm loud. Okay. Now I'm hoping I can get this thing. Ginny, I might need your assistance because this is different than mine at home. This is the tricky part about cooking in somebody else's kitchen. Oh, wait, I know. Oh, I know. Let's take it off first. Is that what I need to do? And then we'll go? Oh, it locks. Yay, look at that. Okay. All right. If you don't have garbanzo beans at home, you can really use any type of bean. So any type of white bean would work. Navy beans, pinto beans. I've made this with black beans before, so really any kind of dry bean would work. I wouldn't put lentils in there because it's going to be really dry. But the bean has to be canned because it needs to be already kind of softened. Okay. We need to melt a bag of chips in the microwave. You need to put it in something glass. Okay, so the next thing we do is we're going to melt some chocolate chips. And while we're, while we're getting these melted, I'm going to add just a half a cup of sugar and the baking powder to this to make it rise. So let's see. We've got our fancy step stool in here. Yep.
Of all the beans you mentioned, any of them better than any other?
You know, they all contain, they're a little bit different nutritionally in that they might have 1 or 2 grams higher than others. They're all a good source of antioxidants and folic acid and potassium. I can't really say that one is better than another. The one benefit of any kind of dried beans is they're really high in soluble fiber that helps to lower cholesterol and manage blood sugar. So I'm a big fan of beans. They're also really simple to cook, and they're inexpensive. So they keep for a long time, and you can heat them up in a pan and they're done. You can put some salsa in and make them into burritos or cook them over rice. They're just really simple to eat. So let's get our little contraption out of here. I'll figure this out by the end of the night. Okay, sugar. Feel free to ask me questions. I see a lot of new faces. I see some very familiar faces that are here. I just did a demo, I think, 2 weeks ago, maybe? It was Saturday. Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Do you recommend non-alkalized chocolate chips?
Non-alkalized chocolate chips.
Non-alkalized chocolate. Because
that's a good question.
alkalization process, from what I've read, destroys all the beneficial flavonols that are helpful for cardiovascular.
If you can find non-alkalized cocoa, I think that's great. You're probably going to pay quite a price for it, though, but probably better for you, sure. I don't specifically buy that because usually if I'm using cocoa, I'm baking, and I don't see it as necessarily health food. So I just use whatever cocoa I can. I'm just being completely candid with you. So.
How many grams of sugar are in this cake?
How many grams of sugar? Oh, that's a good question. So the carbohydrate, it's hard to tell because when I analyze the cake, it's in total carbohydrates. So I would say, just as a guesstimate, there's probably at least 3 or 4 teaspoons of sugar. Because there's 30 total in a piece, and I would think that at least half of that, maybe a little less than half, would be coming from sugar. Because you're also going to have, most of the carbohydrates are going to come from the beans, and then they're going to get some from the chocolate as well. Does that help? Okay. So I need a half a cup of sugar. I've only got an eighth here, so I need 2 more of these. 2. Okay. Now I need some baking powder. Any other questions?
I have a question on triglycerides.
Yes.
Is there a list of foods you ate tonight? Is that where your triglycerides? Can you speak to the dietary?
Sure. So triglycerides are kind of an interesting thing. So triglycerides are sugar and fat molecules that are in your blood after you've eaten. So when you digest food, if you've eaten anything with sugar or fat, or really if you've eaten anything, triglycerides will be kind of floating around your blood until they get stored for energy to be used up later. The foods that affect triglycerides, or what's going to affect triglycerides, if somebody has diabetes because they have extra sugar floating around their blood, their triglycerides might be elevated. If they drink a lot of alcohol or they drink a lot of juice, that will also raise triglycerides. Some people have familial hypertriglyceridemia, meaning it's just genetic, where their body just produces more triglycerides than normal. Things that help to lower it would be lower sugar diet, lower fat diet, less alcohol, obviously, exercise, and then fish oil. So there's actually a high-dose prescription fish oil that will help to lower triglycerides. So really, it's less sugar. Weight reduction helps as well, because the more body fat that you have, the more typically fatty acids that are going to be floating around in your blood as well. And the thing with triglycerides is that they make your arteries sticky, and that's where the risk for heart disease comes in. If your triglycerides go too high, and I've seen lots of really horrible incidences of pancreatitis. If your triglycerides go through the roof, meaning they go over 500 or 1,000, you can develop pancreatitis because your pancreas is trying to pump out all these extra enzymes to digest all that extra fat and sugar that's floating around your blood. So you don't want them to be too high.
One of the urologists said stay away from fish oil.
Really? Because of the processing?
A study of prostate cancer showed that fish oil actually increases the
And see, I've read that with flaxseed oil because of the processing of flaxseed oil, but not with fish oil. So I would say if you don't need fish oil for any cardiovascular reason, and you have a risk for prostate cancer, or if you have prostate cancer, then probably don't use it. But I would always check with your doctor to see how it's going to interact with any of your other medications. And that's the problem with supplements. People start taking lots of different supplements and they don't realize that they, although they're quote natural, they're not necessarily safe or tested. So I always have to be a little careful. It's a good question. Okay, so I need to get my chocolate here. Oh look, it's there. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. All right. I feel terrible starting off with the cake, you know. Okay, we are going to do something healthy. We really are.
You've got our attention.
Okay, good.
It's always good to eat dessert first. Everything you're live.
That's very true. I'm really kind of a foodie first and a dietitian second. If you don't like food, you're in the wrong field if you're in nutrition. So, because the food has to taste good or you're not going to eat it, and that's pretty important.
Have you ever tried making that with stevia instead of sugar?
I have not. I would think that, to be honest with you, I would think that Splenda might taste a little bit better in here than stevia. I'm not sure about stevia and baking. Does anybody bake with stevia?
It's supposed to be very good. I don't know what the quantities are.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I know, like with Splenda, it's kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. Stevia, I'm not sure how much you would use because most of the artificial sweeteners are exponentially sweeter than sugar. So, you know, a lot of them are like 200 to 500 times sweeter than what you normally, you know, sugar. Oh, it was with Splenda? Yeah. Oh, I'll get that back to you because we're going to get that one. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, now that I know how to use this, I'm so excited. Mine's different at home. It doesn't look like this. This is a whole new, it's like the attic or something. It's just all new. Sure. Probably be a little richer, in fact. You know what actually enhances the taste of chocolate really well is coffee. I gotta figure out how to put coffee in there, but I have kids, and so I can't give them cake if I start with it. They'll be a little too crazy.
How much chocolate do you use?
How much chocolate? It was a bag of Semi Sweet Chips.
Little bag?
What's that?
Did you want to know how much?
Yeah, he was asking how much of the bag that I used.
12 ounces.
12 ounces. All right. Now this is really thick, so I don't want to dump it on the floor, which would be awful. And then you wouldn't have any cake, and then I'd never come back. Completely embarrassed. Okay. 4. There we go.
Did you grease the pen? Did you grease the pen?
I did. Ginny just sprayed it with a nonstick spray, which is really just, pressurized oil, and then we dusted it with some cocoa. And if you look at it, it looks like cake batter.
It is cake batter.
Because it's cake batter. I would say it's more really, it's pretty rich. It's more like a brownie when it's done. Okay, so how long do we need to bake this?
So it's done.
There we go. You're going to eat ice cream.
Weren't you supposed to get that on the way in?
Yeah.
Who said that? Does anybody cook?
Does anybody cook? Salads are great. I love salads. How many of you cook? There's a new term, I think it's called scratch quick, where you kind of make a little bit from scratch, but then you do something quick with it. So, give you an example like guacamole. You start with fresh avocados, but then you use canned tomatoes with green chilies or something to add to it. And I would say I'm a scratch cook. I like to, I might start with frozen vegetables or frozen chicken and then cook the rice or whatever it is. So I'm all about convenience. Those of you that have been in here before know I love that jarred garlic. I love garlic, and I love simple ginger because it's just easier. It still makes your food taste good. It's just simple. And it's what?
Anything to make it simpler.
Anything to make it simpler. Yeah.
And I'm going back to cooking from scratch.
I will when I'm a grandma. When I have more time.
What if you don't have a food processor, would a blender work?
I think you could do it in a blender. You might need to do it like in small batches.
Oh, okay.
Just because the only liquid really that's in here is going to be the eggs.
Oh,
So you could probably do like a little bit, maybe half at a time.
okay.
That might work. Okay. Put that over there. And really in the grand scheme of things, and I know there's sugar in the chocolate, a half a cup of sugar is not a whole lot in a cake. What do you think about it? I mean, I was looking for a recipe for sweet potato bread. And we actually made sweet potato bread the last time I was here. And the bread actually had more sugar than the cake. Which I was like, well, that's weird. So you just never know. You kind of have to look at the recipe. But, the bread had like 2 cups of sugar and the cake had 1.5, which didn't make any sense. So I have to kind of read it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put our chocolate in here. Then we'll get the, so I'm almost ready to bake this. We have till 9, right?
Until 9:30.
While you're prepping, can you
Yes.
speak to the latest research on sugar and cancer?
So the thought with, and part of this is also weight related, that the problem with excess sugar is that it feeds all cells. I mean, we need sugar to survive. So your brain needs sugar for energy, your muscles need sugar for energy. The problem is that, the regular or the healthy cells are also going to be fed while cancer cells are being fed with sugar. So there is some data on longevity with, and this is actually a real group. They're called the cronies. Has anybody ever heard of this? It's basically a group of people that find that if you reduce your caloric intake by 25%, then you reduce overall metabolism. and you reduce metabolic activity, and you can actually live a little bit longer. So, and most of the studies have been done in animals, so they see like less metabolic activity, less cancer growth, that sort of thing. So it's hard to say, because we don't want to necessarily lower somebody's calorie intake when they have cancer, because you need, I mean, depends on the type of cancer, because so many of them are really metabolic, especially head and neck cancers, any kind of gastrointestinal cancer, they're very, very metabolic. So it just depends, you kind of have to look at it from an individual standpoint. The thing with sugar in general, though, is that you're not going to get any nutrients from it, so it's just going to add more calories and tax your body metabolically and cause more fat storage, which can, potentially increase your risk for certain cancers. I don't know if that really answers your question or not. So I guess less is better, but you also have to look at the person's quality of life. I mean, you say less is better, but the funny thing is, one of the first things that we give to somebody in the hospital when they're not eating is Ensure, which is totally full of sugar. So, so what I try to do, and I know so many of my patients are just sick of it, so I'll say, would you rather have some cheese and crackers? Would you have some cottage cheese and fruit? So I'm still getting some nutrients in them that have a decent calorie load, or even, nuts and fruit or cereal or something like that, rather than all these processed sugars. But it's interesting how all of that stuff is really marketed towards people that are sick, but it's probably one of the worst things we can give them, because it's so high in, it's just very processed and high in sugar. So that's the conundrum, because you really do need to feed the cells to give them energy, but the cells aren't going to, discriminate between what's healthy and what's cancer. I mean, the sugar isn't. It's going to feed both. Okay.
When it gets to the cellular level, is there a difference between the fructose and the glucose?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So his question is, when it comes to sugar, is there a difference between fructose and glucose? So almost anything that ends in ose is sugar. So you have lactose, maltose, glucose, fructose, sucrose. Sucrose is table sugar. Glucose we really think of as more as blood sugar, and then fructose is in fruit and honey. They all raise your blood sugar at some point. Your body uses all of those different sugars for energy. Anything that's consumed in excess is going to get stored as fat. Fructose doesn't raise your sugar as fast as sucrose. So like with people that have diabetes and drink orange juice, they're really actually better having like hard candy or a Lifesaver, because that's sucrose and that's actually going to raise your sugar faster. Or if they had Kool-Aid or something that has sugar in it, that's going to raise your sugar faster than fructose. All of them are, again, going to provide about 4 calories per gram. Fructose might be a little bit more, like honey has a little bit more calories per teaspoon than table sugar. I don't know if that helps or not. It's still sugar.
When it gets to the cellular level, are you saying it's the same?
It's more or less the same. I mean, they're like, chemically, if you looked at a molecule of sugar or if you looked at a molecule of sucrose or glucose or fructose, they're all pretty darn close to each other. They're all carbohydrates, so they all break down pretty similarly.
Let me ask a follow-up question on that.
Sure. Go ahead.
Does a cancer cell favor one type of sugar over another?
No, I don't really know. I can't answer that question. I will tell you that there's probably more data on vegetable consumption and the prevention of cancer than there is fruit consumption. I mean, I think of fruit as being healthy for blood pressure and for lowering cholesterol and those sorts of things. But when it comes to cancer, there's really more data on tea and vegetables and whole grains and preventing cancer than there are fruit. Not that I'm saying don't eat fruit, because fruit is obviously really good for you. But most of your studies really push more vegetables. Unless you count tomatoes. I guess tomatoes botanically are a fruit, but they're not as sweet as, a peach or something else. All right, what am I doing? All right, so I put some of this away. We're going to go ahead and bake those cakes. And then I'm going to get started on the farro salad. We're going completely backwards. I never know how they're going to print this up. I just email them the recipes. So we're going to do the chicken and green bean salad next. And we got a couple things we got to cook.
Is that what you're talking about there, Andre?
Yeah, so these are, so we're probably going to use 1.5 bags because there's 8 ounces and 5. I wonder if I should just cook all of it. I probably should cook all of it because I got a big room. All right. Can I use this for the jar?
That's right.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. So farro is an ancient Mediterranean grain. It's very, very high in fiber. It's also high in protein. It is not gluten-free. Just anybody gluten-free in here? Oh, good. All gluten eaters. Good. Oh,
No, I have issues.
you have issues with it. Okay, then don't eat my salad. I'm sorry. Okay. So if you don't need to be on a gluten-free diet, which really only about 1% of the population really needs to be, they either have celiac or they may have gluten intolerance. Gluten is actually beneficial because it gives your bread sort of that elastic feel to it. And most foods that contain gluten are pretty high in fiber. So whole wheat bread, barley, rye, those are all gluten-containing grains. And then farro is one of them. So this is actually really high in protein. In a half cup, it's got 10 grams of protein. And when you compare that to rice only has maybe 3 or 4. And the fiber content is 5 grams, which is also very high. Brown rice only has about 2 grams. Quinoa has about 4 or 5 grams. So it's very high in fiber. Why do I care about fiber? Why am I pushing fiber on you people? You gotta get your bowels to move, that's important. Lowers cholesterol. How about your appetite? If I give you white bread or whole wheat bread, what's going to make you feel fuller? Yeah, it keeps you feeling fuller, and that's really important for your energy, and it's also great for weight control. So for people that are trying to lose weight, if you give them lots of processed food, they're hungry all the time. If you give them foods that are higher in fiber, they digest a lot slower, and they don't raise your blood sugar as quickly, so you stay satisfied a lot longer. It's good.
And if we're going to give Trader Joe a little plug here for sending us all the food,
Yes.
I just discovered a terrific bread they have.
Oh, you did? What is it?
7 carbs
Oh,
and
that's low.
3 fiber.
Mm.
And if you divide the fiber into the carbs and get less than 5, it's terrific. And if you look at a lot of crackers and breads, they'll be as high as 20. Unbelievable.
Well, now, are you talking about the net carbohydrates? Because that's kind of a marketing term.
Carbohydrates
Yeah.
and fiber, and I divide the one into the other. But I don't know the name of the bread.
Spoilers. We gotta cook the green.
Trader Joe's sprouted bread, and it's delicious.
How do you cook the chicken? The chicken? Yeah. So the thing to look at on your bread label.
49.
Oh, okay. With the carbohydrate content on your bread, that fiber is part of the carbohydrate. So when you see 20 grams of carbohydrate, whatever fiber is in there, that's part of the carbohydrate. So most bread is going to be high in carbohydrate because it's mostly grains. Your cereal is going to be really high in carbohydrate. Your breads are going to be really high in carbohydrate. Rice, pasta, popcorn, all of those are going to be high in carbohydrate. Don't necessarily fear carbohydrates. Your body needs it for energy. What I wouldn't eat a whole lot of is my cake. No. But, you know, your body still needs, you need fiber, but I would eat whole grains. I would eat, you know, brown rice and quinoa and farro and different things that contain a lot of fiber, a lot of protein, a lot of other nutrients. So don't shy away from that stuff.
Can you talk about soluble and insoluble?
Yeah, what the differences?
Yeah, and what foods come with?
Sure. So his question is, can I talk about soluble versus insoluble fiber? I want to make sure I'm getting my stuff going, or I'll just keep talking. Soluble fiber is the type of fiber that kind of forms a gel after you've eaten it, and that's found primarily in pectin, which is the flesh of the fruit, and it's found in beans, and it's found in barley, and it's found in oatmeal primarily. Those are your best sources of soluble fiber. And what soluble fiber does is it helps to reduce your blood sugar and your cholesterol and your appetite. The skins of fruits and vegetables, and then things like bran and shredded wheat, whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, those types of things, those contain insoluble fiber. And both types of fiber really aren't digested very well. So the insoluble fiber helps to bulk up your stool, and that's what keeps you regular.
That's really all it does.
Really all it does. I mean, it also kind of kills your appetite. It doesn't digest as quickly, so it doesn't raise your blood sugar as fast. So you want to eat both types of fiber. And most of the time you're going to get a mix of fiber. I mean, if you eat beans, you're going to get the soluble fiber from the inside, you're going to get the insoluble fiber from the shell. Same thing with an apple. You're going to get the insoluble fiber from the skin, you're going to get the soluble fiber from the flesh of it.
The soluble fiber you're still gonna digest, though. It's still gonna get into your system.
Well, partially. It's not going to provide, it's only going to provide about 2 calories per gram, where regular carbohydrate provides about 4. So it's not completely digested.
Well, they really recommended this soluble or an insoluble fiber a lot. I mean, people say
Probably because heart disease is the #1 killer. And if you're eating, whole wheat products or whole grain products, then you're probably getting insoluble fiber. But if you're eating fruit or brown rice or oatmeal or barley, you're getting soluble fiber too. So you want to get a mix of them. I believe Metamucil is soluble fiber, the kind that you take at night to lower your cholesterol. And that has been found to work. So when you eat fiber, you've got to make sure you drink a lot of water. Because if you don't, you're going to go the other way. You're going to get you constipated. It'll get stuck in your bowel because it attracts water when it moves through your system. Which one is this corner pocket here? This one up here? If I boil the water up here? Yeah. This one's over here. Okay.
Can I ask you about water?
Yeah.
I'm worried if you drink too much water.
You can. So what happens if you drink too much water is that your tissues swell up and you can get a condition called hyponatremia. And natremia is just sodium. So if your blood sodium drops too low, your brain starts to swell because you need some sodium for neurotransmission. So it'll basically shut down your brain. So you've probably heard of different contests on the radio or hazing or something like that where they make some kid, I mean sometimes it's just alcohol intoxication or toxicity, but it can be water toxicity. If you drink too much, your blood sodium level keeps dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And then you get a little crazy.
You got to drink quite a bit to do that.
You got to drink quite a bit to do that. But I've seen it in alcoholics before. There's actually a condition called beer potomania. It's drinking. I mean, until their blood sodium is just near death. Pretty scary. And then you know what the treatment is? We water restrict them. So we don't let them drink as much water until that blood sodium naturally comes back up. So I would say what's excessive? Most women need at least minimum 2 liters of water a day, which is about 8 cups of water. Men, probably more like 3 liters of water a day. Excessive, I don't know, probably over 5 or 6. I mean, your kidneys will still flush it out, but why chance it? Any other questions?
Your recipe has using extra virgin olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk with respect to prostate cancer, olive oil versus polyunsaturated vegetable oil,
Sure.
processed vegetable oil?
Yeah, so your monounsaturated oils, and the extra virgin just means it's the first press of the olive, so it's going to have the most intense flavor. It's still going to have the same fat content as regular olive oil. I don't think you're going to see any difference between the amount of monounsaturated fat that's in extra virgin versus regular olive oil. As far as prostate cancer goes, the monounsaturated fat is going to be a lot healthier for you. I'm trying to think. The canola oil is also monounsaturated. It contains omega-3 fat, which is better for you. It's more of an anti-inflammatory, where your vegetable oil is more polyunsaturated fat and it contains more omega-6, which tends to be more pro-inflammatory. So you really kind of want to get a blend.
So are you saying the canola oil would be better for us than what's the other one you just said?
When we were talking about olive oil, I wouldn't say it's necessarily better, but I would use that instead of something like vegetable or corn oil. or butter.
I'm sorry, I have it together now. Is the canola oil better for us than the olive oil?
I don't think it's necessarily better now.
Okay.
But it's still a perfectly fine oil to eat. There's a lot of hype because canola oil is one of the foods that are genetically modified, but we've never had any studies that show genetically modified foods are necessarily bad for us. To me, it's a very, very big marketing ploy. So until we have some studies, I want to see some stuff. I'm a geek. I want studies. I want somebody to say, you know, this definitely causes allergy. This definitely causes anaphylaxis or whatever it is.
Monsanto doesn't want to do this stuff.
Well, but you're reading Monsanto's blog. You're reading some of the heretics' blogs, so you got to
Other
read the science.
countries have outlawed it and we haven't, so I mean, somebody's done some studies.
I don't think so. I don't necessarily think so. Yeah, I think a lot of it's based on fear. So, yeah.
But yes, I was using olive oil, but this is a little more expensive. So I started using a blend of canola, olive oil, and grapeseed oil.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm surprised that would be less expensive though with the grapeseed oil. That's usually pretty pricey. Oh, it's less expensive. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, you know, when you're cooking with different oils, it's good to get a blend of different things. I know there's this big push for coconut oil, and I'm not sold on a coconut oil yet because it's very solid at room temperature, and that type of fat can still raise your cholesterol. Haven't been. In fact, I brought an article because I thought I bet I'm going to get some questions on this, but. You want to pass this around, just give it back to me. But this is actually a really great article from the Center for Science and the Public Interest, and so they do very non-biased scientific research, and it has, you know, bottom line, no good evidence that coconut oil can help you lose weight or prevent Alzheimer's and whatnot. But again, a lot of these companies will latch on to one study and then all the products come out. So you really have to pay attention to that. So if you want to pass that around, just, you know, take a look at it. Is that heating up?
Yeah, I'm going to repair some.
Oh, is that, you're going to use that for chicken?
No, just one, but they don't fit.
Okay, so that's going to be chicken?
Yes.
And that'll be my greens?
What's your opinion of red wine?
My opinion of what?
Red wine.
Red wine, moderation. So, yeah, it depends on the grain. The one with the highest phytochemical content is actually Cabernet. You really got to be careful with alcohol. So for women, it really raises the risk for breast cancer quite a bit. So it needs to be, you know, moderation. For men, 1 or 2 drinks a day. For women, really more like 3 drinks a week. Less is better.
Did you say it raises the risk of breast cancer?
Yes, it does.
Does white wine do the same?
Any type of alcohol. Just alcohol in general raises the risk for breast cancer. Smoking and alcohol are probably the worst combinations.
Is there a better red wine than the other that you said cab?
I mean, I can't say better tasting, better nutritionally. I mean, Cabernet has the most antioxidant content, so that's better, I suppose, yeah. But you know, dark beer does too. I mean, Guinness beer is also full of antioxidants. So it's the same out that you can do, which is important. Are we boiling? Oh, yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. What's that?
I read on the research that if you have a 5-ounce glass of red wine each day, that's very good. No more, no less. Unless you like the full
That makes sense. But again, that's that moderation and consistency. You know, I would have taught at UC before, and you know, you talk about the benefits of different food substances, and the students would all think, oh, so if can I save up that 6-pack of beer and drink it all at one time? And I'm like, no, that's not the same. So it's really about your exposure and how much you consume and how often. So a little bit is probably fine. Too much, no. What's that? Okay, let's see. All right, we'll go ahead and put the farro. Thank you. Okay. Alrighty. So I am going to, actually I'm not even going to measure this because I'm probably going to end up cooking both bags because there's so many people here. So this should cook up in about 10 minutes. So you guys have been using some curry or turmeric there. That looks good. Nice yellow.
Is the Pharaoh 1-to-1 with the water content?
Actually, no. You can just. It's actually 3-to-1, but it's different than other grains where once it's cooked, you can just pour off the excess water. So, but this recipe really just says to go ahead and boil it. If you look at the, and I'll pass the bag around so you guys can kind of see what I'm using. It really doesn't give a. It doesn't really give an amount, to be honest with you, of water.
With my gluten issues, is there something else that I could use that would be similar?
Yeah, I would use quinoa.
Okay.
Yeah, quinoa is gluten-free, or you could use brown rice.
Okay.
Amaranth is another gluten-free grain. Sorghum. Sorghum hasn't really hit the stores yet, but sorghum is another really great grain that's gluten-free. It's got a lot of fiber in it.
That was buckwheat, isn't it?
Buckwheat is gluten-free too, even though it has wheat in the word. Bulgur is not. Bulgur is cracked wheat. Okay. What if we have a timer somewhere?
It seems to me, I'm sorry.
I have that one.
Oh, we have some on the
10 minutes. So while that is cooking, I have to cook my green beans.
If your neighbor or somebody don't.
Scissors somewhere?
Ah.
She's actually timing the Pharaoh for 10 minutes. Do we have like a colander somewhere? Now, if you wanted to use different vegetables in this, you could certainly use broccoli. Broccoli would go well in this. Or asparagus would also go really well in this recipe, especially since it's in season. But we're going to use green beans. Oh, I got a whole lot of green beans here. And before you go, Trader Joe's has a recyclable bag for you. If you take a card and bring it into their store, they'll give you a little reusable bag to use in their store. So before you go, don't forget to take those. They're just over here. There's a little card over there. All right. So I'm just going to steam these green beans. And you know, you can actually cook your vegetables in the microwave. Anybody cook vegetables in the microwave? No? Any reason why not? Just don't like the taste? No? They actually probably cook up a little quicker in the microwave. Okay.
Are there any studies on microwave cooking of vegetables relative to their
nutrition?
Possible destruction of nutrient content?
You probably destroy, to be honest with you, probably destroy more when you boil them because you're boiling out, you're using more water than if you're steaming them. So in a microwave, you don't need to use a whole lot of water, so you probably retain a lot more of the nutrition.
Microwave is good.
Microwave is good. Yeah, it's perfectly safe. There's nothing wrong with it.
When I put my vegetables in the microwave, they don't come out, you know, like too mushy or anything like that.
Right.
They come out just slightly on the crisp side,
Yeah.
almost as if you lady steamed them.
Yeah, I put asparagus in the microwave. I did a little demo on Fox on Sunday, and I had asparagus. And I cooked it right on the set before I made like a vinaigrette for it. And I cooked them too long. I put them in for like 3 minutes and they were like completely mushed. I was like, oh great. So thankfully I didn't cook the whole bunch and I just put another batch in for like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. And they were perfectly steamed, nice and bright green. So I actually prefer cooking in the microwave. But since I'm in front of you guys, I don't want to throw them in there. You know what I mean? So.
You ever bake them with olive oil and garlic?
Oh yeah, they're really good like that. Yeah. I like to do kale like that, and I do Brussels sprouts that way as well. I think beets are the new kale. I'm waiting for beets to come out. Okay. Let me just make sure.
Brussels sprouts bought on the stalk.
What's that?
Brussels sprouts bought on the stalk.
Yes.
Are much better than a bag or.
Oh.
Because you don't get any of the. Sometimes you get bitter Brussels sprouts if you buy them
in the
in a
bag.
packet.
Okay.
But off the stock we have never had, and you just break
Yeah.
off however many you want.
Where do you buy them on the stalk?
You can buy them at Trader Joe's in the fall.
Okay.
Or Kroger. Kroger
Yeah.
carries them.
Sometimes sells them like that
Okay.
sometimes.
Good to know.
And they respond to you asking, because Kroger wasn't carrying them.
Yeah.
Trader Joe was, we live in Claremont County.
Oh, really?
So we don't get to Trader Joe as often as
Okay.
other people.
Nice.
So we asked our Kroger and they started carrying.
That's great.
But again, it's something more in the fall.
Sure. Yeah, it's probably when they're season.
I want you to say that about 5 times fast.
All right, so we've got Ginny cutting onions. Do you know, was this triple washed? This was washed.
Oh, I rolled up for you.
Okay. We're going to do a nice little spinach and strawberry salad.
That's not specified. Oh, wait. No. Triple wash, yeah.
Yep, okay. So I don't need to wash it. All right. How are we doing time-wise on the farro? It looks like it needs more time.
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. That makes sense. Still needs a little time. The beans. Let's see which. It's hard to tell which is which. We need to cook the chicken too.